Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Vayishlach. He sent Genesis 32:4 to 36:43. This one's called Fight Club. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. We're about to break the first two rules of Fight Club right now, because we're about to talk about the fighting from conception to completion between the light and the dark, the trials and tribulations of Jacob, the great deception, the end of days, and all the battles that took place between the sons of Jacob and the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, mainly the Amorites. So there will be tremendous insight brought to you, as well as a lot of storytelling from the Midrash will take place. The purpose of all this information is to show you that we as Jews and doers of the law, what we have faced, are facing, and will have to face, from the beginning until the end of time. To show the nations that they too play a part in the coming of Messiah, and not to underestimate their role, and to show the power of those who put their lives in the hands of God. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. A wild ride awaits us today. So this is the first time I've done a study and given a teaching on this portion in particular, and so I am excited to share it with you. Hollywood ain't got nothing on the things that we are about to learn here today. I hope this brings encouragement to you all and gives you some perspective as to where we are going to go. And so let us begin. In the last few verses of Parashat Vayishlach last week, we read this. This is in verse 2. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Hebrew says, Vayakov halach ledarko, vayifga'u, boom, bo malachei Elohim. What most people would have seen, or rather anyone who did not have the privilege of sight would see, is no more than mere mortal men. Now this verse, however, gives us Jacob's perspective, and for good reason. The verse could have just said malachim, angels, but it very specifically says angels of God, malachei Elohim. Also the language of vayifga'u, they hit him, right? This is the very same lingo that we saw when Jacob hit the spot, vayifga b'makom va'elin sham, kibah hashemesh. And why does it use this very specific language? Because Jacob recognized some of the angels from the ladder. He's like, hey, what's up, Michael, Gabe, how you doing? And this b'ki'ah, right? It was not meant to harm him, but to protect him. And this is what Psalms 91 is referring to. He who dwells in the covert of the Most High will lodge in the shadow of the Almighty. I shall say of the Lord that he is my shelter and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will save you from the snare that traps from the devastating pestilence. With his wing he will cover you, and under his wings you will take refuge. His truth is an encompassing shield. You will not fear the fright of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. Pestilence that prowls in darkness, destruction that ravages at noon. 1,000 will be stationed at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not approach you. We will see this in this parsha. You will but gaze with your eyes, and you will see the annihilation of the wicked. For you said, the Lord is my refuge. For you said, the Lord is my refuge. The Most High you made your dwelling. No harm will befall you, nor will a plague draw near to your tent. For he will command his angels on your behalf to guard you in all your ways. Ki mal'achav yetzaveh lecha, lach, leshomrecha bechol darkecha. These angels are them's angels. And who were these angels, in fact? These were none other than the 4 archangels who sit beneath the throne of God. And they are Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. So we knew that Jacob recognized at least 2 of them, right? Michael and Gabriel, because he saw them ascend up the ladder in his dream. I even think that they were grateful to him because he was given such a vision to enable them to return to the heavens. Again, they were allowed to go back because the vision was given to Jacob. And Jacob said when he saw them, this is the camp of God. And he named that place Machanaim. Machanaim comes from the word machaneh. Machaneh means camp. So Machanaim means 2 camps. God's camp and Jacob's camp. But how could Jacob call just 4 angels a camp? So we'll get to that in a minute. The first, what did the angels tell Jacob before he sent them out? They told him of what Lavan did and how Esau, his brother, is coming with a small army to kill him and his camp. That's when we read, Jacob sent the angels ahead of him to his brother Esau to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. Otherwise, how would he know that Esau was in Seir, right? We only read this from the Midrash because Lavan tracked him down and he was coming from Seir. So only the angels knew that he was coming from Seir. Otherwise, as far as Jacob knows, he was still in Beersheba with his parents. And he commanded them, saying, so shall you say to my master Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Lavan, and I have tarried until now. And I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants, and maidservants. And I have sent to tell this to my master, as unto you, to find favor in your eyes. Jacob is telling Esau 3 things right here. First of all, it is important to understand that Jacob's first and ultimate goal with Esau, his brother, was peace. He was not looking for a fight. This is not to say that he could not destroy him, because he knew that he would prevail if it actually came down to it. After all, God himself promised to keep him and to protect him. Jacob believed God, which is why he approached him in humility by calling him master. Second of all, we must understand the dynamic of these two to begin with. Although Jacob came out second, he was actually formed before Esau in the womb. But since Esau came into this world first, it was indicative that this world would be given to him. But the world to come belonged to Jacob, the pursuer, Yaakov. When Rivka was pregnant with the twins, whenever she walked by a place of idolatry or impurity, Esau would kick and cause a ruckus. He wanted to get out. While every time she walked by a Beit Midrash, a house of Torah, Yaakov would kick and cause a ruckus. He wanted to get out. And this was the discomfort that she felt. So furthermore, when Jacob stole the birthright, he did nothing wrong. Since it was legally his, Esau had sold it to him. And just something very interesting I'd like to add. It's come to my attention that during further study that the pottage that Jacob was cooking was at that where Esau sold him the Bechorah. It was actually for the eulogy of Abraham. In other words, Abraham died on that day. And what happened on that day? That day Nimrod was killed. Abraham lived to a good and old age. His life was complete, while Nimrod was decapitated by Abraham's grandson. And as we discussed, Abraham was taken early, about 5 years early, so he would not be grieved by what would become of Esau. So I just wanted to share that. I found it fascinating. So the entire time that Esau was angry with Jacob, who he knew for a fact had the right to the title of Bechor, firstborn, Esau was really angry with himself. And that's why he wanted to kill Jacob. Not because he deceived him supposedly, but because if Jacob was dead, then Esau would inherit everything. But now Jacob has wives and he has children. And if he were to die, they would inherit it all. Which meant that if Esau was coming to kill Jacob in order to retrieve the title of the firstborn, he would have to wipe out every man, woman, and child in Jacob's camp. And this is when Jacob began to become afraid. It's not for himself, but for his family. So Jacob is showing Esau 3 things in these 2 verses. 1, I have sojourned with Lavan, and I have tarried until now. He says, I wasn't on vacation. This guy put me to hard labor for 20 years, and he deceived me along the way. 2, I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants, maidservants. I have earned everything that I have. And what I have is plenty, meaning I'm a wealthy guy. And 3, I have sent all of this to my master to find favor in your eyes. None of these things matter to me, but only to find favor in your eyes, my brother. Or in other words, brother, I love you. Let's talk. Now you should know, these are the words of his mother Rivka. Okay, Rivka's still in the picture here behind the scenes. And these messengers sent unto Jacob, Rebekah thy mother has sent us to thee, saying, I have heard, my son, that thy brother Esau has gone forth against thee on the road with men from the children of Seir the Horite. Here we go. Now we know that he was coming from Seir. And therefore, my son, hearken to my voice, and see with thy counsel what thou wilt do. And when he cometh up to thee, supplicate him, and do not speak rashly to him, and give him a present from what thou possessest, and from what God has favored thee with. And when he asketh thee concerning thy affairs, conceal nothing from him. Perhaps he may turn from his anger against thee, and thou wilt thereby save thy soul, thou and all belonging to thee. For it is thy duty to honor him, for he is thy elder brother. And when Jacob heard the words of his mother, which the messengers had spoken to him, Jacob lifted up his voice and he wept bitterly, and did as his mother then commanded him. Rivka's hand is still in the picture right here. Verse 7 in our Parsha. The angels returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother, to Esau, and he is also coming towards you, and 400 men are with him. Now here's the backstory from the Midrash of what took place. And those messengers went to Esau, and they found him on the borders of the land of Edom going towards Jacob. And 400 men of the children of Seir the Horite were standing with drawn swords, and the messengers of Jacob told Esau all the words that Jacob had spoken to them concerning Esau. And Esau answered them with pride and contempt, and said unto them, Surely I have heard, and truly it has been told unto me what Jacob has done to Lavan, who exalted him in his house and gave him his daughters and wives. The great tzaddik Lavan, and he begat sons and daughters, and abundantly increased in wealth and riches in Lavan's house through his means. And when he saw that his wealth was abundant and his riches great, he fled with all belonging to him from Lavan's house. And he led Lavan's daughters away from the face of their father as captives taken by the sword, without telling him of it. And not only to Lavan has Jacob done thus, but also unto me, as he has done so, and has twice supplanted me. And shall I be silent? Now therefore, so you look at Esau standing up for righteousness, right? Now therefore I have this day come with my camps to meet him, and I will do unto him according to the desire of my heart. And the messengers returned and came to Jacob and said unto him, We came to thy brother, to Esau, and we told him all thy words. And thus has he answered us, and behold, he cometh to meet thee with 400 men. Now then know and see what thou shalt do, and pray before God to deliver thee from him. Here's your answer. What happens when the armies of darkness are coming at you with drawn swords? The only thing you can do. Pray to God. And when he heard the words of his brother, which he had spoken to the messengers of Jacob, Jacob was greatly afraid, and he was distressed. And we said, why? It was not for himself, it was for his wives and children. And to our Parsha, verse 8, Jacob became very frightened and was distressed, so he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels in 2 camps. So again, why was he distressed? For his family. All the things that were unfolding, Jacob was beginning to see a very clear picture of things to come at the end of days. Now this prayer that he prays here is not only for that time, but for future generations as well, until the end of time. Now, after the prayers, which I'm not going to get into, we got other things to talk about, this is where it gets wild. Our sages say that there is a secret over here, yesh bo sod, that Jacob saw what Abraham saw. Again, listen to me. Jacob saw what Abraham saw. And that if you understand what they actually saw, you would know the truth. They use those exact words. You remember the teaching I gave of what Abraham saw? Check it out, Parashat Vayishlach. Compare and contrast the two, maybe you'll have a clue. I'm not telling you, figure that out. So we can only speculate at this point, or at least you can, but it would seem that Esau is standing in between Jacob and the promise, meaning going home, the land of Canaan, the Holy Land. Now it was because Jacob had prayed that his words made manifest the archangels of God into 4 mighty camps of war. Now we're about to see something incredible happen. And this is all happening simultaneously. You're all familiar with this. Verse 25. Vayivater Yaakov levado. Vayavek ish imo ad alot hashachar. And Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled him until the break of dawn. The Zohar says that this was the angel of Esau, Semael himself, the angel of death, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that it resides within each and every one of us, who was riding upon the snake. That's what the Zohar says, the same one who is responsible for bringing death into the world. And why does it say that Jacob was alone? Because God was comparing Jacob to himself. Isaiah 2:17. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of man shall be humbled, and the Lord alone shall be exalted on that day. V'nisgav Adonai levado bayomahu, vayivater Yaakov levado. It's the same vernacular over there. So why did God go back? Why did Jacob go back? He knew that something was coming, right? He knew it was coming, and yet he went back. So, vayivater Yaakov levado, when Yaakov had remained alone. Our sages say in Bereshit Rabbah 77:3, they state that these words should be read as if Yaakov returned for his jug, meaning levado instead of lechado. Kad is a jug, a pitcher. Now this teaches that Yaakov went back across the river to retrieve small vessels which had been overlooked. Now this teaches that the righteous are very, very meticulous, even with relatively low-cost items, seeing that when you acquire things by making certain, none of them has been tainted by being stolen or otherwise illegally acquired. One does treasure what one has more than do other people who do not mind to acquire things less honestly. In other words, everything he got was from God, and it was important. It was by design. Another approach, the vessels were used to drink out of, and Yaakov was concerned that the younger children should have a chance to drink from them on the journey. He endangered himself in order to have convenient drinking vessels for his small children. So we see Jacob as a loving and caring father, as a shepherd who is concerned about watering his children, his flock, and that he believed that everything that he had and that he was given was a gift from God. Thereby, it was precious. Everything has and had value. He was as meticulous in God's mitzvot as he was with all his belongings. Satan never stood a chance, but he sure tried. Vayavik, and he wrestled. This comes from the word avak. What is avak? Avak means dust. It says that this man was covered in dust. Burned charcoal, ash, maybe? Interesting. Who are we talking about? Who is he wrestling here? He was wrestling from the fiery pits of hell. The third rule of Fight Club is if someone says stop or goes limp, taps out, the fight is over. When he saw that he could not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip became dislocated as he wrestled with him. וירא כי לא יכול לו, ויגע בכף ירכו, ותקע כף ירך יעקב בהיאבקו עמו. It is well known that had it not been for the original sin in the Garden of Eden, there would not be a noticeable difference between man and between angel. On the contrary, man would outrank the angel in every aspect. We base this on Sanhedrin 93. The righteous are greater than the angels. This is what is written there. Accordingly, this angel came to try and find a sin Yaakov was guilty of in order to use the sin as a weapon to overpower him. However, he did not succeed. The only sin, quote unquote, that he could find was that Yaakov had married two sisters during their lifetime, something that had not yet been forbidden because the Torah has not yet been given. But it alludes to in the writing, he inflicted an injury on Yaakov's hip joint. This was a euphemism for his sexual organ and the seat of his sexual desire. The punishment, such as it was administered near the organ so that Yaakov limped for a while. Another allusion included in the words "Vaiga bechaf yelcho," he struck the socket of his hip, is the damage inflicted by the celestial representative of Esau, who would manifest itself in later generations among descendants of Yaakov who would suffer under the Romans. Right? Who's Esau? Esau is Edom, Rome, and so on and so forth. When the Torah wrote, the angel was unable to harm Yaakov, ki lo yachal lo, the meaning is that he was unable to harm Yaakov personally, right then and there. But again, this is what Yaakov was afraid about, not the next generations. They were not protected as he was. He did not have permission to do so to Yaakov because Yaakov was unblemished. However, later generations who would not be so unblemished would become victims, fall victims to Esau. The fourth rule of Fight Club is only two guys to a fight. Vayomer shalchuni. He, the angel, said, "Let me go." The angel was afraid that if he were to leave without having obtained Yaakov's permission, they would punish him in heaven with having to endure the pulsei denura. What is the pulsei denura? What was Satan afraid of here? It's a physical punishment administered by a fiery rod and mentioned in Masechet Chagiga 15 and elsewhere as an instrument for disciplining wayward angels. We have another reference to this incident in Hosea 12:5. I'm going to read 4 and 5. In the womb he seized his brother's heel, we're talking about Jacob, and with his strength he strove with the angel. He strove with an angel and prevailed. He wept and beseeched him, the angel did to Jacob, in Bethel he shall find him, and there he shall speak with us. Jacob was the victor here. Jacob just subdued death. Satan just tapped out of the fight. And why? Ki ala shachar, for dawn has risen. When the angel asked to leave before daybreak, Yaakov asked him, "Are you a thief that you need to fear daylight?" He answered, "I am an angel, and ever since I have been created, I have not yet had the opportunity to sing a song of praise to the Lord in the heavenly choir. And today is my opportunity." In other words, this was his final mission before he could go sing before God. Now there's a reference to this in Job 38:7. Baran yachad kochavei boker ve'eriu kol bnei Elohim. When the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. The time of dawn is the time when the Kedusha is recited as mentioned by Isaiah 6:3, and one would call to the other, "Holy, holy, holy." Hearing this, Yaakov replied, "Lo eshlachecha ki im barchetani." I will not let you go unless you first bless me. Jacob wanted Esau's angel, the angel of death, to acknowledge that the blessing that he had received from Yitzchak was a right blessing. In other words, that he was the Bechor. Thereupon the angel said, "Lo Yaakov ya'amer od shimcha, ki im Israel." Your name will no longer be Yaakov, but Israel. Now he meant that from now on, people will no longer say that you obtain the blessing by any means of deceit, but they will admit that you are the rightful recipient of them. Alternatively, the angel meant that what he meant was that if anyone were to accuse Yaakov of having swindled Lavan, they would be proven wrong, as Yaakov had been accorded the attribute truth, emet, that he had acted truthfully in all his undertakings. In other words, the angel of death, the great accuser and deceiver of men, had nothing against him. And this is confirmed in Micah 7:20. You shall give the truth of Jacob, the loving kindness of Abraham, which you swore to our forefathers from days of yore. Mimei kedem. Titen emet leYaakov, chesed leAvraham. Now, back to our parsha, verse 29. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanded power with God and with men, and you have prevailed. Ki sarita im Elohim ve'im anashim vatuchal. Now, ki sarita im Elohim, for you have contended with divine forces. He did. In this instance, the word Elohim refers to the angel representing Esau with whom Yaakov had wrestled. And the words ve'im anashim in the same line refers to Lavan and to Esau. Now, according to Bereshit Rabbah, the words Ki sarita im Elohim means that Yaakov's countenance was engraved on the throne of God, which we had discussed already plenty of times. And the angel had realized this after looking at Yaakov. Once he bested him, he's like, now I see why. Now I get it. Now there's a major point here that will be discussed later. So we'll put a pin in this topic for now. And again, we're going to come back to this at the end. So keep this in mind. The fifth rule of Fight Club is one fight at a time. Now this rule is also about to be broken. Since while Jacob was wrestling with Esau's principalities and powers, the four archangels that left Jacob were on a mission of their own. Now I'm going to read this backstory to you from the book of Jasher, but I did find some discrepancies between the Hebrew book that I have and the English translated, the online version, but I made the corrections within it. And the Lord sent out four angels of the angels of heaven. The English, it says three angels for some reason, and then the text corrects itself later on. In other words, the English is to be taken with a grain of salt. Always compare it with the Hebrew. And they went before Esau and came to him. And these angels appeared unto Esau and his people as thousands and hundreds of men riding upon horses, furnished with all sorts of war instruments. And they appeared in the sight of Esau and all his men to be divided into four camps, with four chiefs to them. There were four waves. And one camp went on, and they found Esau coming up with 400 men towards his brother Jacob. And this camp ran towards Esau and his people and terrified them. And Esau fell off his horse in alarm, and all his men separated from him at that place, for they were greatly afraid. They all scattered, and they all surrounded Esau. And the whole of the camp shouted after them when they fled from Esau, and all the warlike men answered, saying, could you imagine? You have about several 100,000 men, or actually it's going to be even a few million, we'll see, screaming at the same time, surely we are the servants of Jacob, who is the servant of God. And who then can stand against us? And Esau said unto them, O then, my Lord and brother Jacob is your Lord, who I have not seen for 20 years. And now that I have this day come to see him, do you treat me in this manner? Now, this is what it says in the book of Jasher. Now, here's a backstory to the backstory, because the book of Jasher within itself has mefalshanim. So listen up. These angels started pummeling Esau, started beating him up real bad as he shouted, leave me be, for I am the grandson of Abraham. But they kept on beating him. And then he said, leave me be, for I am the son of Isaac, who was bound upon the altar. But they kept on beating him. Finally, Esau shouted, Jacob is my brother, whom I have not seen for 20 years. And only then did the beating cease. Then we continue. And the angels answered him, saying, as the Lord liveth, were not Jacob, of whom thou speakest, thy brother, we had not let one remaining from thee and thy people. But only on the account of Jacob, we will do nothing to them. So they leave, but then this happens again and again and again. So it happens a second time. And the third camp also passed from them. And he still continued his road with his men towards Jacob, when the fourth camp came towards them. And they also did unto him and his men as the others had done. And when Esau beheld the evil which the four angels had done to him and to his men, he became greatly afraid of his brother Jacob. And he went to meet him in peace. And Esau concealed his hatred against Jacob. He hid it. In other words, it was still there, because he was afraid of his life on account of his brother Jacob, because he imagined that the four camps that he had lighted upon were Jacob's servants. Finally, the darkness had vanished and dawn had come. This was happening while Jacob was wrestling with the other angel. See what I'm talking about? At the same time. Now, verse 1, next chapter. Vayisa Yaakov einav vayira vehine Esav ba imo 400 ish. Vayechatz et ha'eladim ve'et Leah ve'et Rachel ve'al shtei hashfachot. Jacob lifted his eyes and saw. And behold, Esau was coming. And with him were 400 men. So he divided the children with Leah and with Rachel and with the 2 maidservants. Now, this is important. Verse 2, and he placed the maidservants and their children first, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph last. Okay? This is another hint of the time of the final redemption. Our sages call this example Maseh Avot Siman Lebanim. The deeds of the fathers are markers for the sons. In other words, what happens to us is because of what our fathers did. Now, I'm going to explain the breakdown of these passages, but before that, I need to catch you all up to speed as to what is written in the Mishnah regarding the times right before Messiah. These are the end times, okay? So this is it's relevant to the topic. So this is called in the Mishnah Ikvata de Meshicha. Ikva as in Ekev, as in Yaakov, de Meshicha. You got it? Of the times of Mashiach. Ekev is also the footsteps of Messiah. So this is in Aramaic. Now the origin of these words come from Psalm 89:52, where it says, Asher chalfu oivecha Adonai, asher chalfu ikvot meshichecha. Which your enemies disgraced, O Lord, which they disgrace the ends of your anointed. Again, the English does not do this justice. Now, in the Mishnah, this is Masechet Sota 9:15. It says this, Rabbi Eliezer the Great says, from the day the temple was destroyed, the sages began to be like scribes. The great sages began to be like scribes, and scribes like synagogue attendees, and synagogue attendees like common people, and common people became more and more debased. And nobody seeks what? The face of God. Upon whom shall we depend? Upon our Father who is in heaven. Al mi nishen al avinu shebashamayim. Now, in the footsteps of Messiah, okay, insolence, chutzpah, will increase, and the cost of living will go up greatly. The vine will yield its fruit, but wine will be expensive. The government will turn to heresy, and there will be no one to rebuke. In other words, there's no one to tell the government, what are you doing? The meeting place of scholars will be used for licentiousness. The Galilee will be destroyed. The Gavlan, or the Golan, will be desolated. And the dwellers on the frontier will go about begging from place to place without anyone to take pity on them. The wisdom of the learned will rot. Fearers of sin will be despised. Fearers of sin, those who fear sin, they'll be despised. And the truth will be lacking. Youths will put old men to shame. The old will stand up in the presence of the young. For son spurns father, daughter rises up against mother, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law, man's own household are his enemies. This is from Micah 7:6. The face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. A son will not feel ashamed before his father. A son will not feel ashamed before his father. Upon whom shall we depend? Upon our Father who is in heaven. Now, I hope this gives us all a better understanding regarding the terminology and the thought process, in addition to recognizing the signs of the times. Do we know where we are? Right now, just look out your window, like we said. Now, back to our verses. This is verse 2. He placed the maidservants and their children first. What is this likened to? So shall the Erev Rav lead the way at the end of days. Who is the Erev Rav? The Erev Rav are the common folk, spiritually speaking, meaning those that are furthest away from God and from the Torah. The Erev Rav were the cause of many of the sins of the children of Israel during the wilderness, including that of the golden calf. They are the ones who joined with Israel in the physical sense to be within their protection, like the Egyptians that left Egypt to come with Israel, but not in the spiritual sense. And so they were a stumbling stone to them. Now, during the end times, these are the ones who will be put up front. In other words, in the physical realm, they'll be the leaders of the time. Then Leah and her children after. Now, these are the people of Israel, the general public. Or in today's relevance, it's the secular Jew, if you will, meaning Jews who have no connection to God or to Torah. And then last, Rachel and Joseph. Those are last. These represent the wise and righteous men of the generation who will be considered in last place, the lowest of the low, or the least important in the generation preceding Messiah. Furthermore, in Masechet Sanhedrin 91a, it says regarding the footsteps of Messiah that the son of David will not come only in a generation that is either entirely worthy or entirely unworthy. So let's break this down because it's not exactly what you think. Meaning that there will be no hypocrites in that generation. Now wait, the wicked man will be on the outside, as he is on the inside, and have no shame of his sinful deeds. Even more so, he will be encouraged by his friends and by his surroundings who assist him with his sins. No shame, yeah, I'm a bad guy, if you will, and this is what I'm doing, and all the surroundings are encouraging it. And so the tzaddik, the righteous, will be completely honest and completely truthful, and all his works are done for the sake of heaven. And even though he will receive adoration and respect of the general public, he won't care, because it's not about anyone else, but about following God's commands. So a generation that is either entirely worthy or entirely unworthy means that every individual will either be completely worthy, meaning blameless, or completely unworthy, sinful. Okay? There's not going to be two ways about it. Neither hot nor cold. Okay? Not lukewarm. Okay. And no man that mixes the two will be found in those days. And when we do see this happening in our story here, right before Jacob, the house of Israel is about to meet Esau, Edom, the Western world, Christianity. Now we've seen this so many times in the last few weeks, especially regarding the end times and all the things that have to take place as a result. Now, do we recall how Rivka advised Jacob to approach Esau? Even though Jacob was in the right, as in birthright, he needed to do it with humility and supplication, to which it says, and he went ahead of them, meaning Jacob, ahead of his children and the maidservants, and prostrated himself to the ground 7 times until he came close to his brother. Why 7? This is the same verse that we brought last week from Proverbs 24. For a righteous man can fall 7 times and rise, but the wicked shall stumble upon evil. I love it when it works out that way. I had no idea this was coming, but it's great. It's fantastic. And Esau ran towards him and embraced him, and he fell on his neck and he kissed him, and they wept. Now, in Hebrew, it says, Vayashkehu vayivku. Vayashkehu, kissed him. This wording is kind of incorrect. Vayanashkehu. That's how you say kiss. The reason it says like this in Hebrew, it shows us that Esau's heart wasn't fully with Jacob. As we know, he hid his hatred from Jacob, but he was reluctantly there and showing outward affection because of what he had been through and, the angels right before. Now, could you imagine the Christian world being humbled and afraid of the Jewish people? The tiny little Jewish people, the 15 million that we got in the world today, and the over 2 billion Christians in the world today. Okay, most people would not come with love, but rather out of contempt. Why? What's going to happen when you find out that Messiah is actually a Torah-observant Pharisaic rabbi? Uh-oh. That's when the nations are going to scramble to grab a hold of the tzitzit of every Jew, because they know how to relate to the man. They don't know how to relate to the man that stands before them. Again, Christianity has nothing to do with Torah. It was used by God as a catalyst for those who are the scattered seed of Abraham to enter into the house of Israel through Jacob. So we have to understand who and what is Jacob, i.e. the house of Israel, in order for us to understand why things are going to take place and the way they are going to take place in the end of days. So we got to start with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? This is the foundation. 1, we have Abraham. He is on the right of the tree. Abraham represents chesed, which is grace, mercy, loving kindness. And the 4-letter name of the Yud He Vav He is attributed to, right? Okay. Now, But this, without being checked, can be extremely dangerous. This means that a person fully fulfills their desire in this world. Fortunately for us, God chose Abraham because his desire in this world was giving to people and fulfilling his calling as he did. So even though the root of his soul was chesed, he was still able to balance himself out by calling upon the gevurah, the din, which we will see then in Isaac. So Abraham was perfection for what he was supposed to be. So his dominance of the positive attribute of chesed was passed along to Isaac, while the negative attribute of chesed went to where? To Ishmael. Ishmael fulfilled his earthly desires back then as he does today. He's a thief. I want what I want and I want it now. Oh, yeah, the Temple Mount that's holy site to you? No, I want it. It's mine. It's Al-Aqsa. Because, by the way, it doesn't say Jerusalem anywhere in the Quran. Not once, but they claim it's their holy site. See what I'm saying? I want your land. I want your money. I want your holy sites. What's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. This is Islam in a nutshell. 2, we have Isaac, who is on the left side, whose attribute is din, gevurah, judgment. This is the attribute by which the world was created and the name Elohim is associated with. If you look at Genesis 1, it's all Elohim. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Everything is Elohim, and only in Genesis 2 do we see Asher bara otam Adonai Elohim. That's the first time you see chesed and judgment put together, and Abraham's name is right over there. Isaac took the better part of chesed to balance out the root of his soul, which was gevurah. So they used one another. And then we have Jacob and Esau. While Esau took the negative part of gevurah, which is din, judgment, the negative part is destruction. He lived by the sword. Jacob was the perfect balance between both positive attributes of chesed and gevurah. And so in the middle, he is right in the middle of the tree, and this is called tiferet, glory. So Jacob was a perfect culmination of the 3 patriarchs, and God chose to birth a nation through him, the nation of Israel. While the bane of our existence has been Ishmael and Esau, represented by Islam and Christianity. Jews don't kill people to force them into Judaism. Jews are not trying to conquer the world. We just want what God promised us, while the other 2 are laying claim to that as well. Now you tell me, who does the land of Israel belong to? Who was the Torah given to? From who is it said that salvation will come? Jacob, Israel, the Jews, all 3. And most people get very, very upset about this fact. Now going back to anti-Semitism, and this is yet another reason that Jacob was afraid and avoided a fight at all costs. He saw that Esau was necessary for the gathering of Israel through history and especially for the end of days. This dynamic is likened to a story of a king who had a son. This is a beautiful story. This son was the heir to the throne, and he had a great responsibility that was upon his shoulders. But this son, the prince, he didn't act like the son of a king. He didn't act with the royal countenance, if you will. And he mixed and mingled with the wrong crowds out there. He wanted to be like everybody else. Now, every time his father tried to correct him, it wouldn't do much good. You're grounded. He would sneak out and do his own thing. He would not live by the rules of his father. His father was grooming him to be the next ruler. So what did this wise king do? He called all the punks that his son had been hanging around with, and he told them this: the next time you see my son, I'm going to give you 100 pieces of gold every time you punch him in the face, and I'll give you 150 every time you kick him in the head. And so the next time the king's disobedient son snuck out to hang out with these guys who were up to no good, you better believe there was some trouble in the neighborhood. They gave him a royal beating and sent him home time and time again. Every single time after that the prince would disobey his father, he knew that they knew they had no sympathy for him. They sent him on his way, going back to the palace. As we've mentioned many times before, God uses nature to correct the nations, and he uses the nations to correct his children. That's why anti-Semitism makes no sense, because, again, logically, zero sense. That's why God instills it upon the nations, and it is a form of correction to keep us united, to keep us separated from the nations. And this is called lifrosh, as in Pharisee. And so you see, this may answer the question as to why we need Esau and Ishmael to be the Jew haters that they are. It's to set us straight. It's to save ourselves, to save our lives, to save our soul. And he lifted his eyes, and he saw the women and the children, and he said, "Who are these to you?" And he said, "The children with whom God had favored your servant." These would be almost the same words that Jacob would ask of Joseph when he introduces him to his kids, Ephraim and Manasseh. Who are these? These are the children that God had given me. Then the rest of the camp humbly stepped forward and bowed down to Esau. And that's when verse 8 comes in, which will explain what Esau had just been through all night long. And he said, Vayomer, mi lecha kol hamachaneh hazeh asher pagashti. And he said, what is it to you, or who are these, this whole camp that I have met in the past? And he said, to find favor in my master's eyes. He's not talking about his family. He just asked, who are these to you? Who is the camp that I met along the way? So Esau is talking about the camp of battle angels numbering at, check this out, 40 million that came crashing down upon him throughout the entire night to break him down and to instill the fear of Jacob in his heart. Because ultimately, what are Esau and Yaakov? Not only are they brothers, but they're twins. Now, some of you might think that they could not be identical twins because Esau was hairy and Jacob was not, but those are just spiritual manifestations in the physical world. Understand this. Jacob and Esau had the same exact face. Esau was hairy, Jacob was not. That's it. Now, this shows us that a person is not only a product of their environment, not only did they grow up in the tent of Abraham and Isaac, but they shared the same womb of Rivkah, who was a great tzaddikus. They were incomplete without each other. And while Esau chose the darkness, Jacob had to pursue Yaakov, the light. When these two finally looked at each other, facing each other in their true form, guess what? They're identical. And if Esau looks like Jacob, and Jacob's face is beneath the throne of God, then that means that whose face is also up there? Furthermore, I'm going to tell you something else. The cherubim upon the Ark of the Covenant, the two angels facing each other, they too have identical faces. And guess who they are but Yaakov and Esau? That's right. Like I said, Christians are not Christianity. We have to make this distinction, this separation. Those that are the true seed of Abraham, which he sent out to the world, have been called out of Christianity and come before Jacob saying, I recognize who you are. You are the firstborn. To you goes the inheritance and the promise, and the covenants have been given to you. Now please, my brother, come and teach me the true ways of the Lord. When we do this, our numbers will multiply and multiply to the point that there will be more Jews in the world than Gentiles at the end of days. This is all a prophecy. At the end of days, most of the world will actually convert to Judaism, and those who do not, they will serve Israel gladly. You hear that, kids? Sooner or later, you will be my brothers. And then I and the rest of Israel, along with all the heavenly hosts, are going to party like it's $59.99. Yeah. What? Rabbi Prince, he had it right. There's a lot of chachma in his words. And now we're going to get into some real fun stuff. We're going to answer a question that perhaps has not been asked. Nevertheless, if you're going to hang around with me, you better know what I'm talking about. And this is Genesis 48:22, way ahead. And I have given you one portion over your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. Now this was Jacob's parting gift to Joseph, shortly before his death. The thing is, where do we ever see Jacob fighting the Amorites? Now the hint is in the verse itself, and that's a double meaning of the word Shechem, because I'm going to read it in Hebrew now. Va'anochi natati lecha, I gave you Shechem echad al achicha, one Shechem above your brothers, asher lakachti, which I had taken, miyad, from the hand, ha'emori, of the Amorites, becharbi, with my sword, ubekashti, and with my bow. Because this is exactly where it all started, in Shechem, and it takes place right here, right now, in our Parsha. So, I want you all to just sit back and relax. No notes, no books, put your pens down. Just listen and enjoy. Go grab some popcorn or something. You're about to enter the fascinating world of the battles of the sons of Jacob. It's story time, y'all. Enjoy. So this is after Shechem, the son of Hamor, kidnapped and raped the daughter of Jacob, Dinah. A sin the entire city were witnesses to, and yet they did nothing. They were all guilty, and they all, they all got what's coming to them. And they circumcised Shechem and Hamor, his father, and the 5 brothers of Shechem, and then everyone rose up and went home. For this thing was from the Lord against the city of Shechem, and from the Lord was Shimon's counsel in this matter, in order that the Lord might deliver the city of Shechem into the hands of Jacob's 2 sons, Shimon and Levi. They said, hey, if you wanna be with our sister, no problem. Start circumcising all your males over there. So they're like, yeah, all right, fine. And the number of all the males who were circumcised were 645 men and 246 children. But Shekedem, son of Pered, the father of Hamor, and that's kind of funny. Hamor is donkey, Pered is mule. So anyway, And his 6 brothers would not listen unto Shechem and his father Hamor, and they would not be circumcised, for the proposal of the sons of Jacob was loathsome in their sight, and their anger was greatly roused at this time, that the people of the city had not hearkened to them. And in the evening of the 2nd day, they found 8 small children who had not been circumcised, for their mothers had concealed them from Shechem and his father Hamor, and from the men of the city. And Shechem and his father Hamor sent to have them brought before to them to be circumcised, when Shekedem and his 6 brothers sprang at them with their swords and sought to slay them. And they sought to slay also Shechem and his father Hamor, and they sought to slay Dinah with them on account of this matter. And they said unto them, what is this thing that you have done? Are there no women amongst the daughters of your brethren, the Canaanites, that you wish to take unto yourselves daughters of the Hebrews, whom you knew not before, and will do this act which your father never commanded you? Do you imagine that you will succeed through this act which you have done? And what will you answer in this affair to your brethren, the Canaanites, who will come tomorrow and ask you concerning this thing? If your act shall not appear just as good in their sight, what will you do for your lives? And me for our lives, in your not having hearkened to our voices? And if the inhabitants of the land and all your brethren and the children of Ham shall hear of your act, saying, on account of a Hebrew woman, did Shechem and Hamor, his father, and all the inhabitants of their city, do that which they had been unacquainted, and which their ancestors never commanded them? Where then will you fly, or where will you conceal your shame, all your days before your brethren, the inhabitants of the land of Canaan? Now therefore we cannot bear up against this thing which you have done, neither can we be burdened with this yoke upon us, which our ancestors did not command us. Behold, tomorrow we will go and assemble all our brethren, the Canaanites' brethren, who dwell in the land. And we will all come and smite you, all those who trust in you, that there shall not be a remnant left from you or from them. And when Hamor and his son Shechem and all the people of the city heard the words of Shechem and his brothers, they were terribly afraid for their lives at their words, and they repented of what they had done. And Shechem and his father Hamor answered their father Shechem and his brethren, and they said unto them, all the words which you spoke unto us are true. Now do not say nor imagine in your hearts that on account of the love of the Hebrews, we did this thing that our ancestors did not command us. But because we saw that it was not their intention and desire to accede to our wishes concerning their daughter as to taking her, except on this condition, so we hearkened to their voices, and did this act which you saw in order to obtain our desire for them. And when we shall have obtained our request from them, we will then return to them and do unto them that which you say to us. They were about to have a double cross going on over here. We beseech you then to wait and tarry until our flesh shall be healed and we again become strong, and we will then go together against them and do unto them that which is in your hearts and in our hearts. And Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, heard all the words which Shechem and his brothers had spoken, and what Hamor and his son Shechem and the people of their city had answered them. And she hastened and she sent one of their maidens that her father had sent to take care of her in the house of Shechem, to Jacob her father and to her brethren, saying, thus did Shechem and his brothers advise concerning you, and thus did Hamor and Shechem, the people of the city, answer them. And when Jacob heard these words, he was filled with wrath, and he was indignant at them, and his anger was kindled against them. And Shimon and Levi swore and said, as the Lord liveth, the God of the whole earth, by this time tomorrow there shall not be a remnant left in the whole city. And 20 young men had concealed themselves who were not circumcised, and these young men fought against Shimon and Levi. And Shimon and Levi killed 18 of them. And 2 fled from them and escaped to some lime pits that were in the city. And Shimon and Levi sought for them but could not find them. And Shimon and Levi continued to go about the city, and they killed all the people of the city at the edge of the sword, and they left none remaining. And there was a great concentration in the midst of the city, and the cry of the people of the city ascended to heaven, and all the women and children cried aloud. And Shimon and Levi slew all the city, they left not a male remaining in the whole city. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son at the edge of the sword, and they brought away Dinah from the house of Shechem, and they went from there. And the sons of Jacob went and returned and came upon the slain and spoiled all their property, which was in the city and the field. And whilst they were taking the spoil, 300 men stood up and threw dust at them and struck them with stones. When Shimon turned to them, and he slew them all with the edge of his sword. And Shimon turned before Levi and came into the city. Shimon just killed 300 dudes by himself. And they took away their sheep and their oxen and their cattle, and also the remainder of the women and the little ones. And they led all these away, and they opened a gate and went out and came into their father Jacob with vigor. And when Jacob saw all that they had done to the city and saw the spoil that they took from them, Jacob was very angry with them. And Jacob said unto them, what is this that you have done to me? Behold, I obtained rest amongst the Canaanite inhabitants, and none of them meddled with me. And now you have done this to make me obnoxious to the inhabitants of the land amongst the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I am but of a small number. And they will all assemble against me and slay me when they hear of your work with their brethren, and I and my household will be destroyed. And Shimon and Levi and all their brothers with them answered their father Jacob and said unto him, behold, we live in the land, and shall Shechem do this to our sister? Why art thou silent at all that Shechem has done? And shall he deal with our sister as with a harlot in the streets? And the number of women whom Shimon and Levi took captives from the city of Shechem, whom they did not slay, was 85 who had not known a man. So there were 85 virgins. And among them was a young damsel of beautiful appearance and well-favored, whose name was Bunah. And Shimon took her for a wife. And the number of the males which they took captives and did not slay was 47 men. and the rest they slew. And all the young men and the women that Shimon and Levi had taken captives from the city of Shechem were servants to the sons of Jacob and to their children after them until the day of the sons of Jacob going forth from the land of Egypt. And when Shimon and Levi had gone forth from the city, the two young men that were left, who had concealed themselves in the city and did not die amongst the people of the city, rose up, and these young men went into the city and walked about it and found the city desolate without man, and only women weeping. And these young men cried out and said, "Behold, this is the evil which the sons of Jacob, the Hebrew, did to this city, and in their having this day destroyed one of the Canaanite cities. And we are not afraid of their lives of all the land of Canaan." And these men left the city and went to the city of Tapnach. And they came there, or the Hebrew says tapuach. Anyway, tapuach means apple. And they came there and told the inhabitants of Tapuach all that had befallen them, and all the sons of Jacob had done to the city of Shechem. And the information reached Yashuv, king of Tapnach, or Tapuach. I'll just say Tapnach because it's written here. And he sent men to the city of Shechem to see what these young men, if what they were saying was true or not, because they didn't believe them on this account, saying, "How could two men waste such a large city such as Shechem?" And the messengers of Jashub came back and told him, saying, "We came into the city, and it is destroyed. There is not a man there, only weeping women, neither is there any flock or cattle, for all that was in the city the sons of Jacob took away." And Jashub wondered at this, saying, "How could two men do this thing, to destroy such a large city, and not one man able to stand against them? For the like has not been from the days of Nimrod, and not even from the remotest time has the like taken place." And Jashub, king of Tapnach, said to his people, "Be courageous, and we will go and fight against these Hebrews, and do unto them as they did unto the city. And we will avenge the cause of the people of the city." And Jashub, king of Tapnach, consulted with his counselors about this matter, and his advisors said unto him, "Alone thou wilt not prevail over the Hebrews, for they must be powerful to do this work to the whole city. If two of them laid waste to the whole city, and no one stood against them, surely if thou wilt go against them, they will all rise up against us and destroy us likewise. But if thou wilt send all the kings that surround us, and let them come together, then we will go with them and fight against the sons of Jacob. Then wilt thou prevail against them." And Jashub heard the words of his counselors, and their words pleased him and his people, and he did so. And Jashub, king of Tapnach, sent to all the kings of the Amorites that surrounded Shechem and Tapnach, saying, "Go up with me and assist me, and we will smite Jacob the Hebrew and all his sons, and destroy them from the earth. For thus did he do to the city of Shechem. And do you not know of it?" And all the kings of the Amorites heard the evil that the sons of Jacob had done to the city of Shechem, and they were greatly astonished at them. And the 7 kings of the Amorites assembled with all their armies, about 10,000 men with drawn swords. And they came to fight against the sons of Jacob. And Jacob heard that the kings of the Amorites had assembled to fight against his sons, and Jacob was greatly afraid, and it distressed him. And Jacob exclaimed against Shimon and Levi, saying, "What is this act that you have done? Why have you injured me to bring against me all the children of Canaan to destroy me and my household? For I was at rest, even I and my household. And you have done this thing to me and provoked the inhabitants of the land against me by your proceedings?" And Judah answered his father, saying, "Was it for naught my brothers Shimon and Levi killed all the inhabitants of Shechem? Surely it was because Shechem had humbled our sister and transgressed the command of our God to Noah and his children. For Shechem took our sister away by force and committed adultery with her." Gzelah, kidnapping, part of the 7 Noahide laws. "And Shechem did all this evil, and not one of the inhabitants of the city interfered with him to say, 'Why wilt thou do this? Surely for this my brothers went and smote the city, and the Lord delivered it into their hands.' This is true, because its inhabitants had transgressed the commands of our God. It is then for naught that they have done all this? And now why art thou afraid or distressed, and why art thou displeased at my brothers? And why is thine anger kindled against them? Surely our God, who delivered into their hand the city of Shechem and its people, he will also deliver into our hands all the Canaanite kings who are coming against us, and we will do unto them as my brothers did unto Shechem. Now be tranquil about them, and cast away thy fears, but trust in the Lord our God, and pray unto him to assist us, and deliver our enemies into our hands. Judah. And Judah called to one of his father's servants, go and see where those kings are, and who is coming against us, and where they are situated with their armies. He sent out a scout. And the servant went and looked far off, and went up opposite Mount Sichon, and saw all the camps of the kings standing in the field. And he returned to Judah, saying, behold, the kings are situated in the field with all their camps, a people exceedingly numerous, like unto the sand upon the seashore. And Judah said unto Shimon and Levi, and unto all his brothers, strengthen yourselves, and be sons of valor, for the Lord our God is with us. Do not fear them. Rar. Stand forth each man, girt his weapon of war, his bow and his sword, and we will go and fight against these uncircumcised men. The Lord is our God, he will save us. And they rose up, each girt his weapon of war, great and small, 11 sons of Jacob, and all the servants of Jacob with them. Now they're saying the 11 sons of Jacob. Some say that Joseph, who was the 11th son, he might not necessarily be there because he was a small child, but he was a teenager. They were all ridiculously strong. And all the servants of Isaac, who were with Isaac in Hebron, all came to them equipped with all sorts of war instruments, and the sons of Jacob and their servants, being 112 men in total, went towards these kings, and Jacob also went with them. And the sons of Jacob sent unto their father Isaac, the son of Abraham, to Hebron, the same as Kiryat Arba, saying, pray, we beseech thee, for us unto the Lord our God, to protect us from the hands of the Canaanites who are coming against us, and to deliver them into our hands. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, prayed unto the Lord for his sons. And he said, O Lord God, thou didst promise my father, saying, I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven. And thou didst also promise me, and establish thou thy word, now that the kings of Canaan are coming together to make war with my children, because they committed no violence. Now therefore, O Lord God, God of the whole earth, pervert, I pray thee, the counsel of these kings, that they may not fight against my sons, and impress the hearts of the kings and their people with the terror of my sons, and bring down their pride, and that they may turn away from my sons. And with thy strong hand and outstretched arm, deliver my sons and their servants from them. For power and might are in your hands to do all this. And the sons of Jacob and their servants went towards the kings, and they trusted in the Lord their God. And whilst they were going, Jacob their father also prayed unto the Lord, and said, O Lord God, powerful and exalted God, who has reigned from days of old, from hence till now and forever. Thou art he who stirreth up wars and causeth them to cease. In thy hand are power and might to exalt and bring down. O may my prayer be acceptable before thee, that thou mayest turn to me with thy mercies, to impress the hearts of the kings and their people with the terror of my sons, and terrify them and their camps, and with thy great kindness deliver all those that trust in thee. For it is thou who canst bring people under and reduce nations under our power. And all the kings of the Amorites came and took their stand at the field to consult with their counselors what was to be done with the sons of Jacob, for they were still afraid of them, saying, behold, 2 of them slew a whole city of Shechem. And the Lord heard the prayers of Isaac and Jacob, and he filled the hearts of these kings, of the king's advisors, with great fear and terror. And they unanimously exclaimed, are you silly this day? Or is there no understanding in you, that you will fight with the Hebrews, and you will not take delight in your own destruction in this day? Behold, 2 of them came to the city of Shechem without fear or terror, and they killed all the inhabitants of the city, that no man stood up against them. And how will you be able to fight with all of them? Look what a united Israel does. Surely You know that their God is exceedingly fond of them and has done mighty things for them, such as have not been done from days of old. And amongst all the gods of the nations, there is none that can do unto his mighty deeds. Surely he delivered their fathers, Abraham, the Hebrew, from the hand of Nimrod. See, this was a story that went throughout all the land. And from the hand of all his people who had many times sought to slay him. He delivered him also from the fire in which King Nimrod had cast him, and his God delivered him from it. And who else can do like this? Surely it was Abraham who slew the 5 kings of Elam when they had touched his brother's son, who in those days dwelt in Sodom, and took his servant as in singular, that was faithful in his house, and a few of his men, and they pursued the kings of Elam in one night and killed them all, and restored to his brother's son all his property which they had taken from him. And surely you know the God of these Hebrews is much delighted with them, and they are also delighted with him, for they know that he delivered them from all their enemies. And behold, through this love towards his God, Abraham took his only and precious son and intended to bring him up as a burnt offering to God. And had it not been for God who prevented him from doing this, he would then have done it through his love to his God. And God saw all his works and swore unto him. This is a testimony that they're giving the kings. And swore unto him and promised him that he would deliver his sons and all his seed from every trouble that would befall them, because he had done this thing, and through his love to his God stifled his compassion for his child. And have you not heard of their God, of what their God did to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to Avimelech, king of Gerar, through taking of Abraham's wife, who said of her, she is my sister, lest they might slay him on account of her? And think of taking her for a wife? And God did unto them and their people all that you heard of. And behold, we ourselves saw with our eyes that Esau, the brother of Jacob, came to him with 400 men, with the intention of slaying him, for he called to mind that he had taken away from him his father's blessing. And he went to meet him. And when he came from Syria to smite the mother with the children, and who delivered him from his hand but his God, in whom he trusted? He delivered him from the hand of his brother and also from the hands of his enemies. And surely again he will protect them. Who does not know that it was their God who inspired them with strength to do to the town of Shechem the evil which you heard of? Could it then be with their own strength that 2 men could destroy such a large city as Shechem, had it not been for the God whom they trusted? He said and did unto them all this to slay the inhabitants of the city in their city. And can you then prevail over them, who came forth together from your city to fight with the whole of them, even if 1,000 times as many more should come to your assistance? Surely you know and understand that you do not come to fight with them. Listen, but you come to war with their God, who made choice of them. And you have therefore all come this day to be destroyed. Now therefore refrain from this evil, which you are endeavoring to bring upon yourselves, and it will be better for you not to go to battle with them, although they are but few in number, because their God is with them. And when the kings of the Amorites heard all the words of their advisors, their hearts were filled with terror, and they were afraid of the sons of Jacob and would not fight against them. And they inclined their ears to the words of their advisors, and they listened to all their words, and the words of their counselors greatly pleased the kings, and they did so. And the kings turned and refrained from the sons of Jacob, for they durst not approach them to make war with them, for they were greatly afraid of them, and their hearts melted within them from fear of them. For this proceeded from the Lord to them, for he heard the prayers of his servants Isaac and Jacob, for they trusted in him, and all the kings returned with their camps on that day, each to his own city. And they did not at that time fight with the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob kept their station that day till evening opposite Mount Sichon. And seeing that these kings did not come to fight against them, the sons of Jacob returned home. Now, I just want to tell you something. First of all, this takes place between chapters 34 and 35. All the battles, which is a lot of reading, that's like way too much story time, could all be found in the book of Jasher. Okay, this is the Hebrew book. I don't know what it's like in the English, but it gives you detail upon detail about each and every brother and their powers and their abilities. They were like the Justice League. Each one of them had their own strengths and whatnot, and they worked together, and just miracles upon miracles happened. But they actually fought against the Amorite kings. Jacob was a marksman with the bow and arrow. Every single arrow that he flung was a kill. It was all a kill shot. Judah rarely drew his sword. He would take people's shields and then bludgeon them to death with them. You know, if someone dropped an axe or a sword upon his head, it would split open. They were close to being invincible. Judah's mighty roar would bring in the terror of God into these people. So in any case, I highly recommend that you go and you start reading some of these things on your own. But now we're going to continue with chapter 35. Now in chapter 35, Jacob gets called back to the same place. After all these battles take place, and it actually numbers the days of battle, they come back to Shechem. And from Shechem, he gets called to the place where he had the dream. Verse 7. ויבן שם מזבח ויקרא למקום אל בית אל, כי שם נגלו אליו האלוהים בברכו מפני עשיו. He built there an altar and he called the place El Beit El. God is calling him back, for their God had revealed to him when he fled from before his brother Esau. But the word says, Kisham niglu elav. The word niglu, revealed, is actually plural. That means that more than one God has been revealed to him. So when we read niglu elav ha-Elohim, its literal translation is, for there the gods have been revealed to him. So what's the text referring to over here? Because I've heard some crazy opinions that there's more than one God, right? Even though the name Elohim itself is plural, because the single tense is Eloha. Eloha is singular, Elohim is plural. Do you recall in 32:31, after Jacob's encounter with the angel of death, and Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw Elohim, and my soul was saved. Raiti Elohim panim el panim, face to face, vatinatzel nafshi. Do you really think that Jacob saw God face to face? That's heresy, since God has no form and no face, and whenever that may be written, it's all a metaphor, and you would be wise to understand that. But you also have to understand the angels, when they are on a mission from God, they're nothing more than an extension of God's will. That's why Jacob asked Samael his name. The angel of death, Satan, he asked for his name because the name of the angel reveals its purpose and direct will of God. Jacob was not told the purpose that was irrelevant to the outcome. So these gods that he saw were the angels of the Lord ascending and descending. They were his extension. And the angels and the ladder, as in creation, of all the realms, all together are all part of God. And God was at the top, and God was standing on top of him. All those things were part of God, right? It's like, think of, let's say, my hands, my fingers, the extension of me. They're all part of me. But what is me? You understand? It's all part of a bigger construct, if you will. So now we're going to set something very crooked, very, very straight. We know Satan is coming. And we also know that he's cunning. We know that he hates us by design. We know that he is responsible for sin entering the world. We've all established this already. And we know that the only one who can destroy him is Jacob. We see this in the Parsha. So when this same angel, who is quite literally created in order to be a stumbling stone for Jacob. Again, after that, only then could he go up and sing praises to God. When that angel, Satan, gave him a blessing, do you just take it? Thank you, Satan. I totally trust you. What did he say? And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. If that was a blessing on its own, how come Elohim himself comes 3 chapters later and repeats it? Or does he? Chapter 35, right? You see, the adversary uses similar words, but he leaves small, seemingly unnoticeable details out. The devil is in the details after all, right? Did God indeed say, "You shall not eat of any of the trees of the garden"? Sneaky, sneaky. But God said unto him, Elohim, vayomer lo Elohim, Shimcha Yaakov, your name is Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. That's the part that Satan left out. And would you like to know why? I have a theory. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. I believe that Satan did not leave that part out for Jacob, but for all those out there who have a desire to graft themselves in. This is not for me. This is for you. How many times over the last year have we learned that Israel is a title that has to be earned? And the only way to become Israel is through Jacob. As God had told him, through you, Jacob. Israel is a becoming, it is a culmination, but you cannot separate Jacob from Israel. And this is what I'm saying today to anyone who is listening. If you are not of the seed of Jacob, meaning if you are not a Jew, listen to me, please. And you call yourself Israel, like many Christians or Messianics out there, just remember that it was Satan himself, the deceiver of men, who has done a number on you, my friend. And that's why God comes afterwards to set the record straight. Your name is Jacob, he said. And when the time is right, and all the seed of Abraham who are scattered throughout the world enter through Jacob, you know what that means, then your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. Yashar El. For at that moment, God elevated Jacob's status to that above the angels and to the Yashar El, the righteous God. That's Jacob. If the angels are also called Elohim, you understand? I can only hope and pray that you do not misunderstand what I'm saying here, okay? Jacob is not God, nor can any man be God, because that flies in the face of everything that is sacred. But Jacob and his seed will rise up to the highest heights of God, thereby overcoming this world and uniting with God in the world to come. And Jacob was 99 years old when he went up to Bethel. And Jacob and his sons and all the people that were there with him remained in Bethel in Luz. And there he built an altar to the Lord who appeared unto him, and Jacob and his sons remained in Bethel 6 months. At that time died Devorah, the daughter of Uz, the nurse of Rebekah, who had been with Jacob, and Jacob buried her beneath Bethel under an oak that was there. And Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the mother of Jacob, also died at that time in Hebron. The same is Kiryat Arba. And she was buried in the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children of Het. And the life of Rebekah was 133 years, and she died. And when Jacob heard that his mother Rebekah was dead, he wept bitterly for his mother, and made a great mourning for her, and for Devorah, her nurse, beneath the oak. And he called the name of that place Alon Bachut. And Lavan, the Syrian, died in those days. For God smote him. Why? Because he transgressed the covenant that existed between him and Jacob. It says he contracted a terrible, terrible disease. And Jacob was 100 years old when the Lord appeared unto him and blessed him and called his name Israel. And Rachel, the wife of Jacob, conceived in those days. And at that time Jacob and all belonging to him journeyed from Bethel to go to his father's house, to Hebron. And whilst they were going on the road, And they were yet but a little way to come to Ephrat. Rachel bare a son, and she had a hard labor, and she died. And Jacob buried her in the way to Ephrat, which is Bethlehem. And he set a pillar upon her grave, which is there unto this day. And the days of Rachel were 45 years, and she died. Now, Seder Olam, it says that she was 37. And Jacob called the name of his son that was born to him, which Rachel bare unto him, Benjamin, for he was born to him in the land on the right hand. The seventh rule of Fight Club is, fights will go on for as long as they have to. Now, ain't that the truth? You see, what Jacob and his sons had to go through just because they stood with the truth, but you also see what favor they had because they stood with the truth. They, meaning Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all their descendants, went through unimaginable trials just so we would not have to. The foundations have been laid. The road has been paved. Where are you going? Stick to the road. Stick to the plan. Stick to what has been done for you. And if you are listening to me right now, then yes, I am speaking to you. Yes, this means you. This is not a mistake. You are not getting through this without a fight. Giants have been slayed, demons have been cast out, and empires have fallen. But the seed of Jacob shall remain always. The final rule of Fight Club is, if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight. So ask yourself this, dear listener. Do you want to fight with us or against us? History has not been kind to those opposing God or his people, and it's about to get real. So give me a call. Let's talk about it. But at the end of the day, we need you. Think about it. You know where to find me. You know how to reach me. So until next time, my friends, I do hope that you enjoyed this teaching. I know it was a lot, but it's something you needed to know, and this is a good foundation for future teachings. So may you have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.